Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. And this is going to be the first of hopefully many easy theory lessons. So thanks for tuning in. And you can go back and listen as often as you need until you understand the concepts. So let me explain first what I am not going to cover. I will not be covering things such as notes, G clef, the staff, how many beats per note, those types of very easy, simple things. If you need those concepts, then you need to look elsewhere on YouTube or the internet, and I'm sure somebody will be teaching that and those concepts. My target audience basically is worship people, worship team members, worship leaders, along with keyboard players, guitar players, and those who play an instrument but are insufficient in their understanding of music theory. You will find that if you learn music theory, it will help you tremendously with everything you're doing as part of the worship ministry team. So I encourage you to pay attention to the lessons, practice the things you need to practice, and go over it until you understand it. Today's lesson will cover keys, scales, and intervals. Later lessons will go into chords, and I'm also going to teach you how to play by ear if you don't already know. So the first major concept today is going to be key, and we will be using a keyboard. So you really need to have a keyboard in front of you to help you understand the concepts. It doesn't matter what size it is. It doesn't have to be a great piano. It can be a tiny little cheap keyboard, just so you have something that has some musical keys on it that you can use to understand the concept. Okay, the first concept is key. We think of a key as something we unlock a door with. We start the car, get into the house, various things. Or it can even be a piano key, something on the piano. But that is not what we are talking about when we deal with the concept of key in music theory. The key is a group of pitches or the scale that forms the basis of a musical composition. Now, we have 12 major and minor keys, but actually more than that, depending on how you interpret it. Some people say up to 40 something. For our use for these early lessons, we're going to be concentrating on the key of C and primarily the key of C major. We're not going to be getting into the minor keys until later. So there are 12 different tones on the scale between C and C. So they would be C, now if you notice there are black keys. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then C, the same as C. A key can be built on any of the notes of the scale, any of those 12 notes. And the reason there are really more than 12 keys is because the black keys can be one of two different keys. In other words, this note here can be a C sharp, or it can be a D flat. So you could have the key of C sharp or the key of D flat. So each of the black notes is responsible for two keys or two scales by name, sharps or flats. But we'll just talk about 12 tones as we're building a key on any one of the tones of the scale. So we have 24 different basic musical languages, 12 major and 12 minor, because we can build a minor scale and a minor key on any one of those 12 tones. Okay, the key name, such as C, D, E flat, or F, whatever it is, will tell you several things about the key. And everybody has a different way that they think about concepts in their mind. The way I think about a key is, in my mind, it's a language. So we're talking the language of C, the language of D, the language of E flat, and all the related chords in that language. So when I'm playing in whatever key I'm playing in, I need to know the key because in my head, I think in that language. So for instance, if I'm playing in the key of C, there are no sharps and there are no flats, at least not in the major scale of that key. So when I'm playing in C, I'm thinking in the language of C, and I'm thinking of all the chords related to that language. The same is true in any other key. And because I tend to play in some keys more than others, I am more fluent in those languages than in other languages. I've taken several languages. I've taken 3 years of Spanish, and I've taken 2 years of Hebrew courses, and I'm not fluent in either one of those. I'm only fluent in English. It takes time to develop a fluency in a different language, and the same will be true in the various keys as you're learning to play in various keys and as you're learning to understand the chord progressions in the various keys. There's also a concept called modes, M-O-D-E-S, which is more or less used in, I believe, jazz, and we will not be covering any of that. I don't think it's necessary to the target audience I have here. I'm sure if you need help with modes, you can find someplace on the internet that will have that. Okay, I'm going to show you how to determine a major scale in any key starting on any note. And if you memorize this concept, it will enable you to play the major scale in any key. Now, you need to understand that the scale, a major scale, the scale is the basis of every key, because the scale is what determines the name of the key. For instance, we're talking the key of C. It's based on the C scale, which is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And as you see, there were no sharps and no flats. And this is true in every other scale or key that you're in. The scale is the basis for the key, and the same name the scale has is the name the key has. So you're saying, well, how do I know how many sharps or flats? Well, there's a simple little formula, and it's kind of like, I think about dance step, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Now, I've written that out on this little page here. You can probably see this. I'm trying to hold it where the camera can pick it up. It's major scale intervals in whole and half steps. Okay, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And now I'm going to show you on the keyboard how that translates. Starting on C, we have a whole step to the next note in the C scale, which is D. Now, how do you know when it's a whole step as opposed to a half step? When it's a whole step, there is a note in between. In this case, a black note. So you have, when you get to E to F, we see there is no black note in between, so that is a half step. The same as when we get to B to C at the top of the scale, there's no note between. So you have whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. You can do that in any key and any scale. So let's just try it in D to show you that it works, okay? So you have whole, start on D, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Okay, so you can apply that to any key and to any scale. And what you really need to do, if you don't know your sharps and flats, and you don't know that the key of D has 2 sharps, or that the key of E flat has 3 flats, one way for you to learn that is to start on, for instance, if you're going to play the key of E flat, you're going to start on an E flat. So in the key of E flat, it's built on the E flat scale. So you start on E flat, and using this formula, you play that scale, and you will know as you look and watch your fingers, you will see there are 3 flats. There's an E flat, A flat, and a B flat. You can do that with all 12 keys. And I suggest that you practice that. Practice your scales, because there's 2 things that are going to happen. As you practice the scale, you will learn where the sharps and flats are, and you will develop your ear to hear. So for instance, say I don't know in the key of D where the sharps or flats are. I just know that it goes from D to D, so I do this. Now obviously, that doesn't have the same major scale sound. Something's wrong. Oh, it must be here. Okay, that's something else is wrong. And as you develop your ear to hear what a major scale sounds like, you'll know when you hit a wrong note. But if you use this formula, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole, 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 half, that will help you with all of your major scales to develop them. So the scale is a set of 7 musical notes arranged in specific intervals. And the music alphabet only goes from A to G, and then it repeats itself. So the scale for a key starts on the note that is the same note as the key. Okay? If you practice all your scales, you'll learn what the sharps and flats. Another way to know what key you're in is to look at the key signature. And hang on one second here. Okay, what I wanted to show you, I'm trying to get this where you can see it in the camera. At the beginning of the measure of any piece that you're about to play, you will see the G clef and the F clef, and you will see either sharps or flats. In this case, you can see this. It shows 3 flats here. This is the key of E flat. So this is one way that you can tell what key you're in. You look at the key signature, and as well as hearing when you're playing where you should go for sharps and flats, the key signature automatically tells you which notes are the sharps and which notes are the flats. Now, if you look at that and say, well, that's nice, that's 3 flats, but I have no idea what 3 flats is. Look at the first note or the first chord. Normally, and we will be covering chords, normally a song will start usually on the 1 chord or the chord built on the first note of the scale. In this case, this book I'm showing you doesn't have a song in it. This just has arpeggios and scales. But if we had a song, it normally would be using those chords from that key. So for instance, if you're in the key of E flat, chances are you're going to be starting on either an E flat, a G, or a B flat, which is the one chord. We'll get beginning to chords later on, but that will help you know that, oh, okay, we're on an E flat chord. I must be in the key of E flat. And that's not always true, but it can be true most of the time. Okay, another way, this is kind of like a cheating way. If there are flats in the key signature, start at the far right and count backwards. Okay, let's look at this again here. Sorry about that. I'm trying to manipulate too many things here that I'm holding on to at the same time I'm trying to do this. Okay, start at the far right, which in this case is on the A, so it's an A flat. Okay, count backwards. The second to the last flat gives you the name of the key. So here's an A. We're counting backwards. The next flat is an E, and it is the second to last because there's only one left. So this is the key of E flat. Now this doesn't work. Let's see. Does not work for the key of C, and it doesn't work for the key of F. Okay, now that's for flats. That's the cheat thing for flats. Let's find the sharps. Hang on here. Okay, sharps. If there are sharps in the key signature, and in this case there are 3, look at the last sharp. Okay. Last sharp is on a G. Okay. Look at the last sharp, which is a G sharp. Okay, sorry about that. I'm manipulating too many things here and trying to handle that and the recording equipment at the same time. Okay, so if it is a sharp key signature, look at the last sharp. In this case, it's a G. Now, find that note on the keyboard, G sharp, which is right here. Now, what you want to do is you want to go up 1/2 step to the next note, and that's the name of your key. This is the key of A. It's 3 sharps, okay? 3 sharps. So for flats and sharps, this will help you if you're having trouble with that. If you want an instant answer, my suggestion is you print out a chart with all the key signatures and the names of the keys, and you can even buy flashcards to help, just like you help your kids with math, to help train you with sharps and flats. But there are charts of key signatures. Wikipedia has one, or you can create your own little cheat sheet reference of key names with sharps and flats. And you can also print out a copy of the Circle of Fifths, and we'll be covering that quite a bit later. But I suggest that you go on online, either in YouTube or some other place, and just type in Circle of Fifths, and you can pull up places where you can print that out. I would suggest also, if you're going to take notes, get yourself a 3-ring binder, like what I use here to keep my notes in. Punch your notes, put them all in one place, keep them so you can refer back to them, especially if you are creating for yourself cheat sheets. And the reason I'm recommending that you create your own cheat sheets rather than just copying things from online is because if you do it and you write it out yourself, you will remember it much better than if you just copy something from the internet or somewhere and just punch it and throw it in your notebook. Okay? Okay, so we've covered scales, which is the 7 notes up and down the keyboard that a key's based on. Another concept that we need to talk about is interval. And when you think of an interval, that is a space in time, such as years, a pause in activities or a gap or space between two different things. We think of intervals of time or intervals of various things in life. A musical interval is somewhat similar as it designates a space or a distance between two different tones or pitches. And we use numbers to indicate those intervals or those spaces. We also use other descriptive terms, which if you've been playing music any length of time, you've come across these. And these are called qualities, such as perfect, diminished, augmented, major, or minor, speaking of intervals and chords. But since we're concentrating on the C scale, the C major scale in the key of C, that is what we're going to look at on the keyboard and talking about intervals. And I have another chart here for that. We talked about the major scale with whole and half steps. Now we're going to talk about the intervals in a major scale. So I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to move it up here if you want to take, try to hold it here. If you want to take a screenshot, you can always come back to this spot on the video and you can stop it and copy this information in your notes if you need to. Okay. These are the intervals, the major intervals or the main intervals in any major scale. And these are in the key of C, what I've drawn here on this board. Okay, the first one is C to C, which is unison. Obviously, it's not going anywhere. The second one is a major second, and that is the distance from the note C to the note D. It's a major second. The next one is a major third. That is the distance from the C to an E. And if you will look at the keyboard, you'll see C, E, it's a third. The next one is called a perfect fourth, which is also a major interval. That is from C to F. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4. The next one is a perfect fifth, the distance from C to G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next one is a major sixth, the distance from C to A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Next one is a major seventh, the distance from C to B, the seventh tone of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then a perfect eighth, which is an octave, C to C. Okay, you have these intervals in all of your major scales. Okay, that's where they're played. Okay, so as we looked at a whole step and half steps, the intervals are not quite the same as when we played the scale. Okay, the arrangement of the major scale, we did that whole, half, whole, half, and you can figure this out. But in addition to that major scale of whole and half steps, the intervals are named by number in their relationship to the first note of the scale. So when we say an interval of a second, we're talking about the relationship from C to D. Okay, and we see that it involves a note in between. So you can have a major second anywhere on the scale in any key as long as you have one note in between. So if I want a major second from F, it would be a G because there is a black note in between. If I want a major second from E, it's not the next note up, it's not an F because it has to have a note in between. So a major second from E is actually an F sharp. Okay? And basically, as I tell people, if you can count, you can do math, you can do theory. Okay, because it's really about counting. You have to understand this counting concept because it's very important as we get to the next lesson where we're dealing with chords because all of the major chords are in thirds. We build in thirds and keep building in thirds. So if you can count the three, you have to understand how many half steps and whole steps are between each of the intervals. When I count intervals, I kind of cheat. I do things a little bit different than perhaps is kosher in theory. I have a shortcut for the way I count intervals, and because chords are going to be built in thirds. So my shortcut for counting is that you count all of the notes, both the starting and the ending. So for instance, we're talking a major second. There's 1, 2, 3. So you count 3 to get a major second. Major second, 1, 2, 3. Major second from anywhere. Let's take it from here. 1, 2, 3. You count 1, 2, 3. You count all the notes, starting and ending. Now, a major third, you look at the key of C, from here to here is a third. But this is also a third, but it's a minor third. But if you're going to count all the notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a major third consists of 5 half steps. From beginning to end, you're going to count them all, whereas a minor third consists of 4. We haven't gotten to minors yet, but major. And then a major 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a major third from here to here. Major third from here to here. Okay? A major, a perfect fourth consists of 6 consecutive notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, a major seventh consists of 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Because you covered all these ones in between. I would say make yourself a small chart for counting the intervals, and it will work in any major key. And you need to understand the intervals, and you need to work on them in every major key. You need to sit down and start with any note on the scale and go up through the intervals and speak them out loud, say what the interval is, and learn how to recognize and how to form the interval. Why is this important? The reason it is important is because intervals are the basis of chords, and we will be starting with chords in the next lesson. And this is how you will understand chords better if you understand intervals. So please work on that. Make yourself cheat sheets wherever you need to, and go back and play anything in this video that you need to help you. Hopefully it isn't too confusing. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to leave them on this channel. And tune in for the next lesson, which will be the start of chords, and we'll be doing a lot of lessons on chords. So thank you for joining me. You folks all have a great day, and blessings to you.